We're joined today by Julian Woodcock, Managing Director of Viking Mines. Julian, thanks for your time.
David, thanks for having me here.
All the focus is on the Linka tungsten project in Nevada. Why is this project so compelling from an investment point of view?
Look, first and foremost, tungsten is where it's at really at the moment. Tungsten's having a great run and it's an essential and critical mineral. In terms of our project, one of the critical things with that is that we have managed to acquire a past producing asset. So this was mining in the 1950s. And then mid-1950s, it sat idle, and then an exploration campaign was undertaken in the late 70s. And since then, as far as we can tell, there's been no further exploration. So as you noted before, hasn't seen any activity for more than 40 years. And it's high grade. It's running at 0.5%, was the mined grade, feeding into the mill at the time. 0.5% is certainly stands up there in high grade tungsten projects. And that's one of the key aspects to this project that makes it so compelling.
For those who don't know much about tungsten, can you tell us a little bit about the commodity, what it's used for, and probably most importantly, why is the US so keen on domestic supply?
Yeah, certainly. Look, one of the main uses of tungsten is in the defense industry. So tungsten is used in artillery shells and tanks and the like. And over the past number of years, with those unfortunate conflicts that have been taking place, it has, however, meant a massive depletion in munitions. And there's drive by both the US and other NATO allies to replenish those stockpiles. That has resulted in a structural deficit of the commodity, and therefore that is needing to be replaced. And specifically for the US, why it's important, there's a number of reasons. Where one of them is the Reshore Act that they have enacted to commence from the end of this year, which bans supply chains of tungsten going into the defense industry from the start of 2027. And this really is putting pressure on sources of tungsten, and there are no local sources of tungsten within the US. So we see ourselves as a future opportunity to feed into that supply chain.
Let's touch on that act that you just mentioned. Essentially, it bans Chinese imports into the defence industry for tungsten supply. What does that mean for anybody developing a tungsten project in the US, not least yourself, but anybody? It must really just hone that in that's where they're going to get the supply from.
Yeah, so the Reshore Act actually bans tungsten from China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. They've ultimately said we don't want any tungsten coming through those supply chains into the defense industry. And that's actually also countered by China, has actually restricted exports anyway. So one's not wanting to give it, the other one doesn't want to take it. That does mean they can certainly source tungsten from elsewhere globally. But the key advantage that we have with our project and other aspiring producers in the US is that we're homegrown. And with all the aspects in tariffs and the like, and the drive to onshore critical mineral supply, we are in a position where we may be able to future supply that commodity. And certainly the Pentagon is reaching out to potential producers of critical minerals, including tungsten, for potential projects that are going to be able to deliver. And so we see ourselves looking at bringing the project forward rapidly. We have a faster market strategy and aim to help plug that supply gap.
And drilling clearly now the focus. You've applied all the permits required to commence that operation. When do you think drilling will commence, and what will it be looking to do?
Yes, so the drilling program is scheduled to commence end of the June quarter. We expect to mobilize rigs. The steps that we have to get through at the moment, we've lodged our permit, as you mentioned. That should be through hopefully towards the end of May. We're in the process of finalizing the drilling contractor, and again, they're giving us indications they're available to get to site towards late June. Then the drill program itself, which is where we're all looking to get to. There's three key aspects to that. So initially, we'll be drilling around the old Linka mine. And with that drilling, we aim to validate and confirm some of the historical data sets, which have some very good intercepts, such as 9.8 meters at 0.5%, as well as some surface sampling, 8.5 meters at 1%. So we'll drill under those areas. But also we'll be stepping out. So to the southwest of the Linka mine, the mineralization goes under a thin volcanic cover, which is blinding any mineralization being exposed at surface. And again, with geophysics demonstrated that contact continues. 800 meters away, there's a surface sample where it comes back to surface running 0.6. So we'll be drilling some initial exploratory traverses across that area. Then the final aspect is a bigger intrusion. So the tungsten is caused by an intrusion that has come in the ground, brought the tungsten metal in. Where it contacts the limestone, there's calcium. Together, they form the scheelite minerals. And with our geophysics, we've defined a 7-kilometer perimeter and only 800 meters or so, or 11% of that perimeter, is exposed at surface and seen any prior work. So part of our drilling will be also looking at testing initially where the rocks are below that cover that we've defined through geophysics.
You've also been looking at processing with an eye on development. Clearly, you've been able to achieve, just using simple gravity separations, some significant upgrades in the concentrate production. What are you seeing and what's it telling you, and how does it help you build out the development story?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that. We've had some really good quick wins. So we only picked this project up in December, and we knew we'd be going through a pathway to get into drilling. But because there's an old mine there's old stockpiles, we had access to mineralization. So we took samples and embarked on a metallurgical test work program. We knew in the 1950s they were processing through a simple gravity and flotation method, which is the pathway that is pretty common for scheelite. But then now we are now replicating that pathway with modern technology, modern equipment, and the samples that we've collected. We got a really good uplift in gravity alone, which is the first part of the process, and we attained a concentrate over 63% WO3 grade, which is a high-grade premium concentrate. And then the waste product from the gravity separation, or the tail, that then goes on to a flotation step. And again, we're seeing already in the early flotation test work that we can get recovery of the mineral, and we're going through the cleaning stages to look to upgrade and maintain the saleable product. Coupling this together and looking at a processing plant, we have commenced with a concept processing study, engaged a company called Mineral Technologies, headquartered in Brisbane, and they have developed a flow sheet for us, and they're currently going through a capital cost estimate, as well as an operating cost and some preliminary 3D design. So we're moving all those facets of the project forwards in parallel with the resource drilling, which we're about to embark upon. And the intent and the strategy here is to bring those areas forwards together. And therefore that means that we can get the project into hopefully production as fast as possible.
Talking about production, what's the path to get there? And I suppose, what does the next 6 to 12 months look like from an investor point of view?
Yeah, so one of the key near-term activities and news that we'll have coming out, we've got the further results from the metallurgical test work. Interestingly, we sampled the tailings dam because we don't believe they were necessarily as efficient in the 50s, so there's an opportunity in the tailings, and then the drilling, and that will take us through with the results through to about August. In terms of the longer pathways, there's a permitting process that you have to go through. You have to collect baseline data, and we're mapping out that at the moment, establishing what the time frame will be. But to that end, the companies that we've engaged in the US have already commenced with our baseline data collection, which is the longer lead time part of it. So we've already managed this year to get some early baseline data at the start of the season, which will roll into next year's seasonal data collection. And then that will put us in good stead for hopefully putting together a mining permit application in the back end of 2027.
A newly acquired asset with a long history, a clear path to develop this project in line with the requirements in the macro environment. Exciting times ahead for Viking and its shareholders. Julian, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me here, David.